Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, friends and society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining me today. Here it is, the Monday edition of Point of View. By the way, this is our Truth Team Week. We'll talk more about that in just a minute. But this hour, we certainly love to talk about some of the things happening in the state of Texas, although I am well aware of the fact that many of you also listen in from other parts of the country. And I also am aware of the fact that, in addition to the fact that probably the significant station that is actually here in this hour is in Dallas, I know there are also radio stations in Minnesota and a variety of other places. So I'm not excluding you, but sometimes we do like to talk about some of the things happening in Texas, because even if you don't live in the state of Texas, it's affecting the rest of the nation. And so I thought it would be very good this hour to bring back a good friend of this ministry, an individual that has really been working in the area of politics for many years, Kathy Ward. And of course, we've also talked about the fact that JP, Kathy, and the Crew is a place where you can go and find out a little bit more. So first of all, Kathy, thank you for joining us once again here on Point of View.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I love being here. This is like coming home to family, and you guys are great. I think the world of you, so anything I can do to support your ministry and your efforts, I'm here for you.
Talk about JP, Kathy, and the Crew, because we do have a link, and we're updating that. So if somebody clicks on it right at this moment, I think we have the old link because you've moved, but we'll get that right one up there in just a minute.
Get that up and running.
And you also have, I understand, a Nightline crew coming in to watch something your brother's doing.
So We've got a very busy day. Thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on this. JP and I made the move from radio to our own podcasting network back in August. My goodness, it seems like 5 years ago, but okay, it's just August. And we've got a number of shows that we produce and that we highlight. Shows, educational shows, legal shows, medical shows, shows about mental health, shows about sobriety. Myself, I'm very fortunate that I have a co-host, Lisa Chastain. She and I do a news show that we started in September. Yeah, Women and Faith. And, how do you live your everyday life as a woman, especially with the struggles of today, being a mom, a wife, a mother, daughter, sister, business person, whatever your walk in life is, how do you bring Christ into that? And so we're loving it. And we've had some amazing, strong Christian women, including Senator Angela Paxton has been on our show, who I know is a regular on your show. And so we're very excited about this. Today, we've got a Nightline crew coming in. Unfortunately, with COVID, there's been increases in drug use and substance abuse, and
so
heartbreaking. Nightline is coming in to our Venture X studio in Frisco and highlighting my brother's show, This Pink Cloud, which is a show about sobriety, and highlighting a young man named the CG Kid, and talking about some of those dangers out there. So look for this show on Nightline to appear and talk to parents about, what do you look for? How do you know your kid's in crisis? I mean, he's going to be talking about a drug, nitrous oxide, which is what you use at a dentist office.
So-called laughing gas, yes.
Well, there's such a huge spike in use amongst young people right now that it's at a crisis. So he's going to be talking about that, and how to get help, and how to help your kids. So it's tough times we're in, really tough times we're in, Kerby. And so shows like yours help educate us on all of the different things out there and how to walk this world with Christ by your side.
Yes.
Yeah.
And again, we'll talk about how you can support this ministry. Matter of fact, one of the things you get when you do support this ministry is these old booklets, and I've just handed you the one called Christ is an Education. I've just now seen it, although since I wrote it, I know what's in it. And the first part of it, interestingly enough, is about the fact that we've had these closed down schools. Yeah. And not only are you so involved in the political process, you have been a teacher. And
Absolutely.
I want a teacher to speak to this for just a minute. I just don't see how you can educate young children, because you've worked with special needs
ed,
kids,
yeah.
When you put them in front of a computer. I mean, it just doesn't seem like that works.
Kerby, I have so much respect for educators out there trying to educate and navigate these waters. I don't know how they do it. My students, when I taught special education at Plano East back in the 90s, way back, you can figure out my age from that. I was so hands-on. My teaching team, my special ed team, we were so hands-on with our kids. Of course, I dealt with students who had severe, profound, mental, physical needs. I don't know how you do that through a computer.
I don't either.
And my students, in order, especially some of them because of their physical limitations and because some of them were severely handicapped and mentally handicapped, a parent would have to be there with them in order to even get any of that. And
Sure.
then I'm thinking, well, okay, well then what do you do as a mom or a dad or a caretaker or a grandparent? Well, how do you work your job? Because you're expected to be on Zoom and you're expected to be, online for your job. So I don't know how parents and teachers
I don't either.
And kids are navigating this. And we can't get back soon enough to the real way that you can educate kids. And God bless the teachers who are able to do this and do it well. And I know there are quite a few of them out there. God bless them.
And you have
Hats
talked
off to
about this, that sometimes a Zoom call makes sense if a child has strep throat or they've broken a leg or something like that.
Absolutely.
So we recognize that there are times when that might work. But the first part of this booklet is just all about, the fact that we've closed down the schools, that there are a lot of teachers that say, I want to teach, but then you have these various groups, the NEA or the American Federation of Teachers or others saying, no, we're not going to do that until you pass Medicare for all, you pass a wealth tax, you implement a moratorium on voucher programs, that you actually have police-free schools, and going, wait a minute, most of that doesn't have anything to do with education.
Well, and if you're talking to the educators out there, Kerby, and you know this, I mean, you've got friends who are educators. I've got tons of friends who are still in education. We've got an education show on our network, and the Ask Dr. B. Good show. Those teachers want to be with the kids. They're not saying we want this, and this. A lot of them want the vaccines, and I absolutely, that's your choice. If you feel like you need a vaccine to go back, if you still want to keep on a mask, with Governor Abbott lifting the mandates, that doesn't mean you aren't allowed to wear a mask or you aren't allowed to get a vaccine. You can still do what you want. It's a free country, I think, still today. Yay, we hope so. They want to be back with those kids.
Yeah. Of course they do.
They're having to work like 3 jobs right now. Some of them are managing kids in class,
right,
with social distance and with different parameters, and they're doing online. How are you 2 places? God bless these men and women who can do that. I would not have been able to multitask and teach kids online and in person at the same time. They all need a raise.
Well, for sure. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, I just thought I'd mention that one of the things we are doing this week is, of course, it's our Truth Team. And this is where we actually encourage people to consider what they might do to support this ministry. And one of the things that we oftentimes do is have a match. And we have an individual that has decided to match just this 12 o'clock hour, this particular hour, because it's relatively new. We're on AM 1160 and a variety of others. But we know that there are people listening this hour, and we specifically want to hear from them. So if you are saying, I'd really like to support this ministry, and I'd like to wait until there's a match announced, because we obviously will announce one of those for the national hour, which happens 45 minutes from now. But we have a match for this hour only.
Excellent.
And it'll just carry over until we finally reach it. It's $1,000 right now, and if we reach that, maybe another one. So good time for you to maybe go to the website, pointofview.org. pointoфview.net. Make your pledge and have it doubled. We'll talk more about that right after this.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Cancel culture has been around for some time, and most of us have a few examples of the crazy reactions from the woke mob. But the worst may have taken place earlier this month when a musician was canceled for mentioning a book he read. Matt Walsh observes that just when you think we have made it to the farthest reaches of cultural lunacy and of the cowardice that enables that lunacy, we find still deeper depths to plunge. Winston Marshall is the banjo and lead guitar for the group Mumford & Sons, and merely posted this tweet mentioning the Antifa expose by Andy Ngo. He said, "Finally had the time to read your important book. You're a brave man." That's all he said, but that was enough for the cancel mob to come down on his head. Now, you might wonder if there was something else in his past. Well, 3 years ago, the group invited Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson to visit their London studios. He had his picture with Dr. Peterson, and that drew controversy. People were calling for Marshall to be fired. People were calling him all sorts of names and made unfair accusations. He might have posted a response reminding critics that all he said was that he had read the book. He could have even argued that you can't criticize him for reading a book that you probably haven't even read. But that's not what Marshall said. He deleted the tweet and apparently many others and wrote the usual groveling apology about coming to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. Then he went on to say that he'd be taking time away from the band to examine my blind spots. The apology, of course, did nothing to help his situation, but unfortunately did everything to embolden the woke mob to go after another celebrity that strays from leftist ideology. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointoфview.net. Pointoфview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
Truth Team is this week, and we are encouraging you to join with us in the Truth Team. We have Kathy Ward with us, and I just might mention for just a minute, of course, we will do that in more detail at the next hour, that your particular gift helps this ministry. And as I mentioned just a minute ago, we have a specific match only for this hour. And so if it doesn't finish off in this hour, we'll postpone it till tomorrow. But I'm hoping we might even finish it off because, again, when you have a match, that means if you give $100, becomes $200. Some of you might say, well, I maybe can't give you too much, but maybe I could give you $1 a day. And we have what is called the $30 a month. So $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. You do receive these booklets. Matter of fact, the most recent one we're holding up here is on the area of education. I have one here on immigration. I'm going to get Kathy's comments about that in just a minute. And we have many other topics as well. And of course, at the higher levels, $50 a month, not only do you receive the booklets, but of course also the Outlook magazine. We have a beautiful canvas bag for the men, a beautiful leather laptop bag for the women, and all sorts of great resources that are there. And I would encourage you to go to the website, pointoфview.net, and find out a little bit more. But also, if you would like to call someone, we do have some people waiting for a phone call. So that number is 800 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151. And we have a match on the table, and we've never really done that before at the noon hour. But Kathy, if nothing else, we know there's a lot of listeners, many of whom have listened to you on the radio as well.
Yes, and just so excited to be back here with you, and especially this week, and very excited. I think this is the first time I've kicked off a Truth Team Week with you, and we've had a match.
Yes.
Yeah, that's huge during the noon hour. I love that. That's fantastic. And again, we have to fight the good fight. And I know we're getting ready to talk about immigration. And so this leads up to this. Oh my goodness. What are they going to say now? But this is one of those things you've got to be informed. You have got to be educated. And there's so few places, Kerby, that you can go to get the truth and to get information that for the conservative way of life you believe in.
Yes.
And this is one of those few places you can go and get educated. These books are fantastic. I mean, what do you have to pledge to get these? These are great.
$1 a day, $30 a month.
Okay.
There you go.
Well worth it. I mean, I keep these like in my glove box.
I've
For the years I've been with you, I'm like, oh, I need this one now. You know, this is such good information. You know, if you're at church, if you're talking amongst your friends, bring out some tidbits and some information so we can be empowered with good knowledge to go out there and fight the good fight.
And if you have a college kid that comes home and they're convinced that socialism is the best idea and it's better than capitalism, well, there's one on socialism.
Yeah.
You know, and let's talk about immigration, though, because we are in the state of Texas. And just down the road here in the convention center, we're going to have 3,000 15 to 17-year-old boys, unaccompanied minors. Now, it was interesting, Kathy. Here's a good example of where the media doesn't tell you the truth. I was seeing article after article saying children. Now, I don't know about you, but when I hear children, unaccompanied children, I'm thinking 8-year-olds, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds.
Early elementary school children.
Not 15 to 17-year-olds.
No.
Some of whom are, I think, a little bit older than 17.
How do we know?
Yeah, and so
how do we know? Yeah.
They just show up there, and it's like, what are we going to, because now we're filling up beds all over the state of Texas, aren't we?
Oh, I believe it. As a matter of fact, I just pulled this up. I had heard that there was a new overflow facility, and this is out in West Texas, that may house up to as many as 2,000 unaccompanied migrant children. And I'm just, as a mom, I can't, somebody please explain to me where the humanity is in this. Mm-hmm. You know, you've got kids who, we assume kids, again, like you said, we don't know, 15 to 17 years old, maybe a 20-year-old who looks younger, we don't know. How can we let this happen? And I think there's going to be 3 of these centers in the state of Texas. Mm-hmm. How can this be ignored by the media, by Congress, by the Senate, by the president? This is a humanitarian crisis. It's a horrific humanitarian crisis. How can we ignore this?
And again, there's almost a media blockade about that. Robert Knight will be with us a couple hours from now because we're going to talk about where do you go to find truth. And of course, I know what he's going to say. You're going to listen to Point of View.
Yes.
Because he has worked for the Los Angeles Times and he's also worked with Media Research Center. So he's been on both sides of this.
Wow. Did not realize he was with LA Times.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to listen. I've got to listen to that one.
But it's a good example of just saying, he worked out when he used to work there. There were stories sometimes they wouldn't cover, but you've never seen a situation where we're just going to block the story. We're going to say, we're not going to allow you to take the pictures. Now, remember when they showed the pictures a couple of years ago and said, look at these kids in cages, and then it turns out the pictures came from
the Obama administration. Yes.
But now we won't even let them take pictures, and we're hearing stories. And, of course, the bigger issue is not what to do with the kids we have, which is a big question, but what have we done that has encouraged so many more to cross over the border? Just recently, you had the Secretary of Homeland Security, Alejandro Mayorkas. Hope I got that right. I'm sure I did. And he was simply saying, well, this is not a crisis. But, when he was the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security, and when then Vice President Joe Biden was in office, when they had 1,000 that crossed over the border, that was considered a crisis. Right. The other day, we had 6,000 cross across the border.
And now it's not a crisis.
It's not a crisis.
And during a pandemic?
Yes. That's the other thing. What about COVID-19?
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. So you had all of these elected officials who were, COVID, oh my God, pandemic and everything, the sky is falling. We have to shut everything down. Help me out with bringing all of these undocumented illegal immigrants. I've got friends who came over here legally. God bless them. That's awesome. Come live the American dream. I'm sure you do too. Mm-hmm. It's illegal, undocumented workers who are not just workers, kids who are coming over. And explain to me, during a pandemic, we can't even manage, and we don't have enough vaccines, and we don't have enough, ways to protect our own people from COVID. But let's go and come on over, bring some more in. The hypocrisy is what I don't understand. How is it a crisis with 1,000 people, like you said, during the Obama administration, but 6,000 is not a crisis during a pandemic? I don't understand that.
So again, that's why I encourage people to consider what they might do to support Point of View, because we're going to tell you the truth. And sometimes we tell you the truth about vaccines, whether you like this material or not. I mean, we just want you to get the information that is available there. And so that's one of the reasons why we're doing that. And again, you have this back and forth right now between the state of Texas, Governor Abbott, and of course the president, vice president, both Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. And it's not just the border states. I've been saying this before. You might say, well, anybody listening in other parts of the country, that's a California problem. It's a New Mexico problem. It's an Arizona problem. It's certainly a Texas problem. Right. But it's not a problem in Nebraska. Well, guess again. It is. Because they're putting these kids and these families on buses, and they're taking them to Des Moines, Iowa, or they're taking them to Lincoln, Nebraska, wherever it might be. Is safe. Yeah. No, and everybody becomes a border state.
Exactly. If you open up the borders, which is happening literally right now, if you think your state is protected by the line of your state, you're sadly mistaken. And then everybody's like, well, but it's federal money paying for this. Okay, you know what? Taxpayer money is taxpayer money, and at the end of the day, it's we the people that are paying for this. Why aren't we taking care of people who we already have here? Kerby, we have got homeless people. We have got people who maybe get a meal if they get to share one that the school sends home with their kids, free lunch program. We have got kids who are not eating. We have got families who do not know where their electricity, how they're going to pay for electricity. Then if we've got we've got mental health crisis, huge all-time high. Substance abuse, huge all-time high. Then I don't get it. If we can't help the people we have here, why are we bringing other people over during a pandemic? For sure.
And we don't have an answer for that one, but certainly we wanted to get into it.
It's a rhetorical question. There you go.
But when we come back from the break, I do want to talk about some positives, because we have some pro-life bills going through the Texas Senate and the Texas House. And so we want to elucidate some of those. And I know many of the people that have sponsored those.
Yeah, good stuff.
I don't know that if you and your family ever found themselves in the dark without heat and maybe without water. Some people
we lost a loved one. We had a death in the family from hypothermia.
There you go. Yeah. And so what's the state going to do about that? So we'll talk about those issues as well. So let's take a break, but good time for you to visit the website, pointofview.net. We're encouraging you to think about joining with us as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. Some of these booklets we've been talking about will certainly arrive, as well as the Outlook magazine, and you'll be supporting this ministry. And if you'd like to call someone, I know you don't want to miss anything Kathy has to say during the break, you can give us a call, 800-347-5151. Every dollar doubled because we have a match on the table, and we'd love to hear from you. 1-800-347-5151. We'll come back and talk about abortion, pro-life bills right after this.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, if you certainly would like to join with us as we are in the midst of our Truth Team Week, starting it off today, we encourage you to go to the website, which is pointofview.net. There's where you can see all the various benefits that come. And I recognize that you don't give to get, but if you join at the $30 a month level, that's $1 a day, $30 a month, you'll receive, of course, the Outlook magazine every month. You'll receive these booklets. And in just a minute, I'm going to talk about pro-life issues. Here's one on abortion that we have made available to you in the past. For a little bit higher level, $50 a month. And Kathy, you just got a chance to see, we brought them in here, the canvas messenger bag for the men.
These are
fantastic. And also
fantastic.
this very special one for the women. So just incredible.
These are
leather
beautiful,
laptop.
Great quality, and it says Point of View on it.
Yes,
so
it does.
They're very special. These are fantastic.
I could see Kathy Ward walking out with that laptop bag.
I was going to say, I like it. It would also have a can of hairspray in there along with the laptop, but that's all good.
Yeah, so that's it. Of course, $50 a month. For $100 a month, they also include in the bag all sorts of goodies, including its booklets and books and all sorts of things. So you can go to the website, pointofview.net, and find out a little bit more. And if you want to give at whatever level, that particular match that's on the table right now will double your gift. $50 a month becomes $100.
Fantastic.
$100 becomes $200. Where can you double your money? Well, actually, in about an hour, we'll be talking with Chuck Bentley about some of that, but that's a different issue. But since I held up the one on abortion, some people are going to say, okay, we're just going to be doom and gloom, or there's some positives. And I want to talk about some of these pieces of legislation. We'll do pro-life first, because I know that's certainly one of your issues.
Absolutely.
And Senator Angela Paxton, who's been on our program and is on yours on a regular basis,
phenomenal.
along with a number of others, have put together a bill that would ban abortions if the Supreme Court overturns Roe versus Wade. Now, some people might think, well, yeah, but we still have Roe versus Wade. The Supreme Court has not overturned abortion, but this is like many other bills that have been adopted in other states, which in a sense says we're ready to go, whatever happens.
Absolutely. Well, and one of the things, Kerby, and I know I'm preaching to the choir with you, the Texas legislature only meets every 2 years in the state of Texas. So we meet for 6 months in Austin every other year. So let's say something passes at the federal level and we're not in session for another 18 months. Then what happens in the state of Texas? This is Senator Paxton, very rightfully so, being prepared just in case. And she is such, and I know she's been on your show, she's got such a great story to tell, being adopted, about pro-life. And
perfect person.
I mean, my good, there's just not a better person to tell that story. So if you want to help support her endeavors in the area of pro-life, please call, text, email her office. And just like when bad legislation's coming around, we say, hey, light up the phone lines,
yes.
Flood the emails, the email inboxes. But at the same time, when something good is going on, that state rep, that state senator, and the governor, and maybe the speaker and lieutenant governor, depending on what it is, needs to know we are in favor of this. And let's get this good stuff passed.
And again, so there is one of those pieces of legislation. I thought I'd pick out one or two others. You have Senate Bill 394. That one actually comes from a Democrat. So again, there are pro-life Republicans, obviously, and there's sometimes pro-life Democrats. Right. This one would tighten the restrictions on drug-induced abortions, because we have this issue of chemical abortions. Yeah. And again, you're a woman, so you can speak to this better than I can. I think if you're pro-woman, even if you're pro-abortion, you'd still have to say anything that would harm a woman, we should have regulations on. But because abortion is seen as so sacrosanct, we don't provide the kind of informed consent, licensing of facilities, or in this case, even protection against the kinds of drugs that could actually harm a woman, right? Right.
And as a female, you're the ability to have children, this is such a blessing. It is just if you didn't believe in God before you got pregnant, trust me, you're believing in God once you get pregnant, because that literally is a miracle you're being handed to you. I look at things like the medicines they use. Well, okay, has anybody informed me that possible increases in this hormone at a massive amount for a short amount of time can possibly lead to cancer.
Yes. And we're not doing that. Yeah.
Well, so if I go in,
consent?
I mean, if I go into my, OBGYN's office, they're going to say if you are on birth control or if you're on this hormone supplement or whatever the case may be, you're going to be barraged with information about why this can be good, but also what those harmful side effects can be. How do you not explain that to a woman? And you may be not only setting her up for cancer down the road, you might take away this woman's ability to have a child maybe 2 years from now. I don't understand why I don't understand why any woman, pro-life or pro-choice, would not want every single bit of knowledge out there for their fellow females, pros and cons.
One more I'll just put on the table because there are so many. This is the Preborn Non-Discrimination Act. This comes from Senator Kelly Hancock, who you know as well, North Richland Hills. And this one would ban abortions based on sex, race, disability. You've worked with special needs children,
Absolutely.
And there is this idea that is being promoted a little too much. And we've heard about this from a variety of different sources. But nevertheless, it's kind of better dead than disabled. And
that makes me sick to my stomach. I think, my goodness, talk about, and it gets me emotional, talk about something so inhumane. And again, I worked with severely and profoundly mentally handicapped, physically handicapped students. I know I've got dear friends, people who became my friends when I was their child's teacher, and other friends of mine through just outreach and work in the disabled community. And I just sit here and think, who are you to say what human being is supposed to be on this earth or not? That's God's choice. God has a plan for every single one of us. And who are we to say that you're not good enough to be alive? It's disgusting to even think about it. And so I was very happy to see somebody focus on, then what's next? Okay, well, if you're not blonde hair and blue-eyed, should you not be born?
Yeah. Well, Johnny Erickson Todd is the one that first identified this phrase, better dead than disabled. And, of course, Johnny Erickson Todd can talk about that because she has spent basically a half a century in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
She's one of the longest living disabled individuals. And so just...
And incredibly inspirational.
Yes.
So... there's so many stories of inspiration out there with these individuals who have lived a life that's tougher than the rest of us. And, God bless those who are out there inspiring us, leading us, and letting us know that every life is precious. No matter what, every life is precious.
Just before we take a break, let me talk about one other piece of legislation, or a couple pieces of legislation having to do with the election. And, we are hearing our friends, I even heard this week, one of the, again, broadcasters, Channel 8, saying, they're pushing forward to actually provide more election integrity when they have not been able to prove that there is any voter fraud. You mean like the 24 individuals convicted of voter fraud here? Of course, that's North Carolina. We have a judge right now that's in court because he and his associates are actually charged with 150 cases of voter fraud.
Right. Yes.
But again, the little cliche is for which there's no evidence. First of all, even if there wasn't any evidence, wouldn't you still want to make sure that you have election integrity? And I love this piece. This comes from John Funn, who's been on the program with us many times before. John Funn, along with Hans von Spakowski, who was a part of the Federal Elections Commission, said, when I went to get my vaccine shot, they wanted my ID. And then when I went to the other person, I had to show identification again. So he says, I'm curious, why is it okay to require ID to save someone's life, but not okay for voting? And so there are all sorts of people that are just kind of saying, I don't understand why Governor, certainly Greg Abbott or Briscoe Cain, who is another one, calling for tightening up some of this issues of election integrity, when, I think we do have people actually charged. In other cases, people convicted of voter fraud.
Absolutely.
Now, it's not as bad in state of Texas as it seems to be in Georgia, but wouldn't you want to make sure that you don't have a situation unfolding in Texas like has unfolded in other states? Does that make sense, or am I missing something?
No, you are absolutely spot on, Kirby. You've got to work proactively to make sure these laws are tied up. And having been a former Republican Party chairman in Collin County, I've served on ballot boards. I know what can go wrong. And if I tell you what, you got to take care of business before the election. Yes. You have to.
Can you imagine a bank saying, we've never had a bank robbery in our bank, so there's no reason.
So, we don't need armed guards. We don't need a security system.
We don't need all that,
No.
Anyway, we will take a break, come back with more right after this.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
My husband and I are your supporters. We just really appreciate the show and the people you bring on.
I am just so thankful for you, Kirby, and for you continuing in this ministry, and for people whom God has lifted up in these last days. I just want to thank you and just ask that God would bless you.
I appreciate Point of View. You've been great and wonderful. A lot of information, and I really appreciate all your work you do.
Why don't you join with some of those individuals that have called in or written in and said they've appreciated Point of View? And if you appreciate Point of View, like we said, we have a match on this hour only. It's different than what we'll do when we go to the national hour in the top of the hour. So there is an opportunity right now for you to make a gift. And if you would like to call in, that number is 800-347-5151. Of course, the website is pointofview.net. As a program note, let me mention next hour we're going to be talking with Chuck Bentley. He has this book called Seven Gray Swans. One of those is simply this idea that we have modern monetary theory, and that's the idea that we can print as much money as we want. Deficits don't matter. And we'll talk about the fact that we have increased the money supply even last year by 23%. When you add just what happened with the $1.9 trillion, about 35% of all the dollars that ever exist on this planet, 35% of them were printed this year. Figure that out. Means that's
unreal.
That means the dollar in your purse right now is going to be worth a lot less next year.
Oh, exactly.
And it means that if you've got investments and you're not making 35% interest on whatever or return on investment in stocks, you're losing ground.
Oh, I'm definitely tuning into the next couple of hours. Of course, I always tune into y'all's show. It's very scary. It's like people think that there's this money tree. And if there is a money tree, will somebody please tell me about it? Because I don't know where to plant it to get it to grow. We sit here and laugh, but this is frightening. This is people's futures. We talked before the show, Kerby, about I'm so scared, and you couldn't pay me to be a kid growing up in this country right now, and there's something really wrong with that.
Sure. And so, again, we'll be talking with Chuck Bentley of Crown Financial. Then the next hour, Robert Knight, we already mentioned, of course, he worked for the Los Angeles Times, and, of course, he's worked with National Review and Media Research Center, but his latest one is on the war on normal. And I didn't know if you know this, Kathy, but it turns out that Unilever actually will no longer have soap for normal skin care, no longer have shampoo for normal hair, because if you use the word normal, somebody would feel excluded.
Okay, I know you're making that up.
And I am not making
it
up.
You're pranking me, Kerby.
400 brands in 190 countries. We're talking about Dove, we're talking about Axe, we're talking about Brute, we're talking about food like Continental, Hellmann's, Breyers, Lipton. They're just going to get rid of the word normal. But I like to know whether it's for oily hair, normal hair, or dry hair. But the word normal, no, we can't have that. And that kind of relates to my commentary today on the cancel culture. Now, if you think things have gotten crazy.
Okay, and each time, Kerby, I think that, Dr. Seuss, Pepe Le Pew, okay, what did he ever do? Elmer Fudd, Mr. and Miss Potato Head. Every time I think we can't put something crazier out there, we do.
Yeah.
You're right. So if you
this is a major multinational corporation that says we will no longer put the word normal. You start looking at your shampoo.
Yeah. Then how do you know?
I don't know.
I mean,
we'll talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just.
Well, he goes on from there, of course, talking about Dr. Seuss and, of course, getting rid of Dumbo, Peter Pan, Aristocats, the Swiss Family Robinson, and all that. And then he goes into, of course, getting rid of Gina Carano, who was with The Mandalorian, and of course, and you got to appreciate that because your husband is an actor, and to see actors getting thrown out because they said something on social media.
Again, you can't have an opinion, and I understand when you represent a brand. And by the way, I love The Mandalorian. I'm a huge Baby Yoda, Grogu fan. If you tune into JP, Kathy, and the crew, the show that JP and I do every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I've got a unicorn because that just makes JP crazy, so I do that as a joke. Plus, I like unicorns.
I've seen you in the Baby Yoda.
And Baby Yoda's there, I've got Grogu. And I sit here and I think, you're right. So if, again, we either live in a country where we respect freedom of speech and the First Amendment, or we don't. So if she were to come out and speak on something that the far left deems appropriate, if she were to promote socialism, okay, so would she be nominated for some kind of award?
Probably.
And instead, you lose your job just because you say who you support and why you support that person. Either we live in a free country or we don't. You can't have it both ways. And that's where I always talk about how the hypocrisy from the left it's deafening. Either you're all in for the First Amendment or you're not.
And again, one of the pieces that I have coming up today on the cancel culture is I've seen people cancel because something they put on social media, or maybe they've said a statement, you go, okay, I wouldn't have probably said that.
Right.
But you now have one of these individuals, Winston Marshall, and he is with a band, and you may be familiar with it since you're so into popular culture, Mumford and Sons.
I have heard of them.
And
I
he
am hip.
simply said he had a chance to read Andy Ngo's book, Your Brave Man. And that was enough to get him canceled.
Okay, so because you talked about reading a book?
Yeah, it was a book that was the expose on Antifa, which I think even if you were a liberal would say, yeah, they may have gone a little too far. But that's enough for him to then have to issue this particular apology. You know what the apology is. You know, I've had to reevaluate my own comments and whether my comment caused somebody pain and, you know, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to take time off to reevaluate. And, of course, that's the problem with the cancel culture. You probably grew up around bullies, and you learned that if you give in to a bully, what happens? Oh,
they're going to bully you over and over and over and over again. So you have to remove yourself from the situation. And I know there's, especially, luckily, again, I'm going to go back to, glad I'm not growing up right now. We didn't have to worry about social media. But at some point, you know, you've got to get your parents involved or a teacher involved and get help for that bullying. I just think if you take all, you know, we all have tough lessons and different things that we deal with in life. And if you continue to make it to where everybody gets a participation trophy, and that's another thing you and I have talked about, and everything's easy and we don't ever want to offend anybody, are we just going to be walking around like robots?
Yeah.
At some point?
Maybe. Well, anyway, we're just about out of time. And if nothing else, I certainly appreciate you coming in. You have a million things you could be doing. You got Nightline crew coming in here. So why'd you come in and spend some time with us? So what would you say?
Because I love Point of View Radio Show. I think the world of you. I think the world of your team here. Y'all are working hard every day to get out the word about if you believe in God, if you read the Bible, if you are a person who has conservative beliefs, I mean, just the things you talked about, Kerby, fewer and fewer places. Talk about not having a safe place. If you're a conservative, if you're a Christian, you don't have many safe places left. You really don't. And you surely don't have places where you can go and get all of this knowledge. And it's all fact-based. You can look it up. And so I highly recommend, if anybody has a chance, even, you know, what do you spend on a cup of coffee? Usually like $3.50. Oh gosh, that's probably at $4.50 for a cup of coffee nowadays. Put that money towards the Point of View ministry. And you guys do such a great job. And I'm so blessed to be part of this family. Get out there and help this show. You know, help y'all get out the good word.
Well, Kathy being here is always a delight, and I look forward to the next opportunity.
We always have a good time.
JP, Kathy, and the crew, and we have a link, and so you can find that as well. We're going to a break. This would be a good time to make a phone call. 800-347-5151. You could join at kind of the baseline level, $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year. You get some of these booklets. There's one on voter fraud. Oh, by the way, socialism, immigration, all those.
We've spoken about all of these just in an hour.
But if nothing else, maybe just say, well, I'm not sure I could join you on a monthly basis, but even a one-time gift. How about $25, $50? It'll be doubled. $50 becomes $100, $100 becomes $200, because we have a match on the table, so we need to hear from you. 800-347-5151. We'll be back right after this.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss, because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of View, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging: apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View starts right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thanks for joining me. It is the Monday edition of Point of View, and came across this yesterday, and we haven't actually posted it, but I thought it was very interesting because it's written by John Fund. Now, you might say, that name sounds familiar. He used to write for the Wall Street Journal, now writes for National Review, and he, along with Hans von Spakovsky, actually have written some books about the need for us to have good voter integrity. Remember that? And really concerned about the issue of voter fraud, and have documented that. There's a database with more than 1,000, almost 1,500 different incidents of voter fraud. Anyway, his piece is, I had to have an ID to get a vaccine shot. Matter of fact, I had to have it twice, had to present it twice, verify my address twice, verify my phone number once after signing up for the vaccine. So then the question that a lot of people were asking is, if it's okay to require an ID to save someone's life, why is it not okay to have it for someone to vote? And it's a good example of needing an ID, he says, for a vaccine shot. But apparently that would be voter fraud, or this would be voter intimidation, or something of the sort, voter suppression, simply by not having an ID, because after all, there's really no issue of voter fraud. And then I came across this article here for our listeners in North Carolina. Federal prosecutors have now added an additional 24 people to an ongoing probe into voter fraud. You remember that thing that doesn't actually exist? And here we have some great examples of what has been taking place here, in which individuals who were falsely claiming to have U.S. citizenship, some of them came from Honduras, Iraq, Canada, a variety of other places, and it's just one of the more and more examples of voter fraud. And maybe, as some people say, it's not widespread, but for not being widespread, almost every day I find another example that fits into this category of voter fraud. So, again, you'll hear that on Point of View. Will they be covering that tonight in the mainstream media? I just don't think so. One other one, and we'll get into some of the topics that we'll be addressing here today. My first article is called "Bureaucracy Has Conquered Schools. Joe Biden Won't Fix It." And it goes into the long, unfortunately sad history of how sometimes the educational bureaucracy and even well-meaning presidents have tried to do the best that they can to improve the schools, but they run into all sorts of difficulties. And it's just a reminder of one of the reasons why even the new booklet that we're going to have coming out very shortly, I just saw it a few minutes ago, and you'll get it in the mail if you are one of our donors, A Biblical View on the Crisis in Education. And in some respects, this booklet reminds us that this week we are in the midst of what is called Truth Team. We are beginning that today, and this is an opportunity where we can come to you and ask for you to consider what you might do to support this ministry, because, as you know, we've been talking about a lot of issues issues that hardly anybody else is talking about in other parts of the media. And so I always bring into the studio an individual that helps us out with our Truth Team Week, and that's Brad Fiss. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you, Kirby?
Very good. You know,
Good.
we've had to do some of these where it's been long distance, so it's kind of good to see you face to face.
I'm glad to be here. It's all working out, and we're coming back. We're coming back.
Yes, we
And
are.
That's a good thing.
And I might just mention that we have many articles that we've posted today. I'm going to get into this whole issue of education because that's our first article we've posted. We're also going to be talking about media in particular. And just to give you guys an overview, we'll in just a few minutes be talking with our good friend Chuck Bentley. He is the CEO of Crown Financial. He wrote this booklet, which we have been encouraging people to get on 7 gray swans. So we're going to be talking about, where do we go to get good financial information, for example, because there are just a lot of things not being talked about right now, like how many millions of dollars are being printed and what that might do to inflation and dollar devaluation and the rest. So we're going to talk with him about that. And next hour, we're going to be talking with our good friend Robert Knight, because he's worked with both the Los Angeles Times as well as with the National Review and Media Researcher and others about just the lack of honesty in the media. I know that surprises you, Brad.
Oh, I'm terribly surprised. The media bias is just so blatantly wrong. So many times they're lying. They really are, and they know they are. They got to know. And it's an amazing thing. They can't connect the dots, like you were just talking about the election fraud. Somehow it's hypocritical. The dots don't connect, and they don't care.
Yes. Well, and again, when you say no widespread, okay, well, nobody thought it was widespread, but how about targeted of issues? And even when we put out our little booklet here on voter fraud, this came out before the election, we were just looking at the examples of voter fraud in the Democratic primary, which I wanted to do because I didn't want people to say, well, that's just Republican voter suppression. No, they actually had to redo an election. They had to have a judge come in and try to figure out who won one congressional election. Do we still even have any idea who won the Iowa caucus? I don't think we do.
Never will.
Yeah, and so then to come and say, oh, but now everything in the election is just perfect, no problems. And it's a good illustration of why we come to you once or twice a year to talk about some of our financial needs, because after all, we're not supported by advertisers, which I think is a good thing. I've looked at how the various cancel cultures right now going against advertisers trying to push people off the air. But we don't go to advertisers. We go to you and ask for your financial support.
It's called listener-supported Christian radio is what we call it, and we're so dependent on you. And one thing I want to mention before we get any further, our theme for this week is committed to truth.
Right.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls of all ages, pay attention for one moment, please. Truth is under attack like never before, ever. In at least my lifetime, maybe before it was different, I don't know. But it is under attack, and it's being redefined, and it's being massaged, and making it friendly and helpful and whatever. No, truth is truth, and we're talking biblical truth.
And again, if you go to our website, you'll see a banner, and when you click on it, it says Committed to Truth, and it talks about some of the facts the mainstream media ignores, some of the topics that are taboo right now in our culture. Even my commentary today is about the cancel culture. And so we ask you to consider what you might do to support this ministry. We've said for as little as $1 a day, $30 a month, $360 a year, you will, first of all, receive the Outlook magazine, and now we're making it possible for you to receive these booklets that we have been writing.
Yes.
And if nothing else, Brad, you've been a fan of these because you say, yeah, really, in about 10 minutes, I can sit down and read this and learn everything I think I really need to know about the topic.
I read it every single month when it comes, and you're right. It's a 10-minute commitment, but what's amazing is how you have condensed everything down to that subject. You really have a clear understanding of the topic in those booklets.
Well, we're going to take a break, but when we come back, we will be talking with our good friend Chuck Bentley, and we'll talk about some of the 7 gray swans. And we're doing that because we recognize you may not always be getting the truth, even just about your finances. Certainly not getting a biblical perspective, except for people like him and some of the other guests that we have. So we're going to talk about what that means. And after going through this incredible incredible year of the COVID and the lockdown and then the race riots and everything else, we're going to spend some time really just trying to focus on what is true. And we are committed to truth, and we know you are as well. So even as we go to a break, I hope that you'll consider giving us a call, 800-347-5151. Would you like to be one of those individuals that starts us off this week of Truth Team? We would love to hear from you, 800-347-5151. And when we come back, we'll talk about some of the other resources, because we've added some very nice ones for those of you that give, and you can see those by going to the website, pointofview.net. Only takes a minute. Matter of fact, I made my gift, and I don't think it'd take me 2 minutes to actually make my gift, and so you might want to do the same. Pointofview.net, 1-800-347-5151.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Cancel culture has been around for some time, and most of us have a few examples of the crazy reactions from the woke mob. But the worst may have taken place earlier this month when a musician was canceled for mentioning a book he read. Matt Walsh observes that just when you think we have made it to the farthest reaches of cultural lunacy and of the cowardice that enables that lunacy, we find still deeper depths to plunge. Winston Marshall is the banjo and lead guitar for the group Mumford & Sons, and merely posted this tweet mentioning the Antifa expose by Andy Ngo. He said, "Finally had the time to read your important book. You're a brave man." That's all he said, but that was enough for the cancel mob to come down on his head. Now, you might wonder if there was something else in his past. Well, 3 years ago, the group invited Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson to visit their London studios. He had his picture with Dr. Peterson, and that drew controversy. People were calling for Marshall to be fired. People were calling him all sorts of names and made unfair accusations. He might have posted a response reminding critics that all he said was that he had read the book. He could have even argued that you can't criticize him for reading a book that you probably haven't even read. But that's not what Marshall said. He deleted the tweet, and apparently many others, and wrote the usual groveling apology about coming to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. Then he went on to say that he'd be taking time away from the band to examine my blind spots. The apology, of course, did nothing to help his situation, but unfortunately did everything to embolden the woke mob to go after another celebrity that strays from leftist ideology. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
We clearly live in difficult times, especially for Christians. Sometimes it feels like the culture is just turning against us quickly. We need to speak up with compassion, but we need to speak up with truth in the way that Jesus did. That's one reason why I'm a big fan of Point of View, is they're dealing with cutting-edge, controversial subjects that the church sometimes doesn't want to deal with. But they do their homework, they do it informed, they also do it in a way that's practical so we understand the issues but know what we can do about them. I often hear as I travel around the country from people, they've listened to a show, they've been following on the website, so it's evident to me that Point of View is making a difference. So if you want to make a difference, especially today in our culture that's becoming increasingly hostile in some ways to the Christian faith, Point of View is standing up for truth, and they need your help.
Our theme is committed to truth. I know you're committed to truth. We are as well. And as you are committed to truth, I hope you're committed to us as well. And that is Sean McDowell. He will be on with us Thursday, so we'll have a chance to hear from him a little bit more. By the way, I might just mention his dad, Josh McDowell, is going to be on with us Wednesday. We have Brad Fisk in studio. And I might just encourage you to visit the website, pointofview.net, because we have added a few things. First of all, we have these booklets, which relate to very much what we're going to be talking about in just a minute with Chuck Bentley. Here's the one on capitalism and socialism. Here's one on socialism. Here's one on debt, which we'll be talking about with him as well. It's all part of his booklet, 7 Gray Swans. But for $30 a month, that's $1 a day, $30 a month, you receive the Outlook magazine. And for the first time, you'll receive those booklets, too, on a regular basis, one every month. At the $50 a month level, we'll hold these up a little bit later, but we have this beautiful canvas bag for the boys and the men, nice. And also this beautiful leather laptop bag for the girls and the women. I had somebody in here who was looking at that, and we made sure she didn't walk out with it because she says, well, it looks like a Michael Kors bag, except it has Point of View on it. And you'll receive those booklets and the magazine and everything. And at the $100 a month level, you receive all of those that I've just mentioned, as well as a number of books and booklets and a Yeti tumbler and all sorts of things. I know you don't give to get, but for your participation with us, we do like to send some thank you gifts.
It's a thank you gift. That's what we really look at. We just want to say thank you for standing with us, and thank you for being committed to truth.
Well, we want to bring to the microphone an individual that I just think so highly of, and that is Chuck Bentley. First of all, of course, he wrote this booklet that I've been talking about a lot. I did a commentary on the 7 Gray Swans. The next Outlook magazine has an article that I've written about 7 Gray Swans. And then I have a Sunday school class at Prestonwood Baptist Church, and we went through the booklet yesterday in the class. So I think you can see I pretty much like what is in the booklet. He is the CEO of Crown Financial Ministries, of course, the radio broadcast My Money Life. He's a graduate of Baylor. I got a feeling he's been watching March Madness. Baylor's been doing very well in basketball. Yeah. So, Chuck, welcome to Point of View.
Well, thank you, Kirby, and thank you, Brad. And I just want you to know that I'm doing very well in my March Madness bracket right now.
Well, that's good because some of the brackets are completely busted, but that's good for good reasons as well. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about, because we say we're committed to truth, is that you're telling us the truth. Now, if people are not familiar with 7 Gray Swans, the idea is a black swan is something you didn't see coming and you were completely unprepared for. But a gray swan is something that seems unlikely, but it did happen. And I want to focus on maybe 2 of the chapters. One is modern monetary theory, because we are saying, Chuck, and this is going to be a theme running through today especially, that we're just not getting the truth. I mean, we had an increase in the money supply by, 23% of all dollars during 2020. You add now that $1.9 trillion boondoggle, we're up to maybe 35%. And the impact that it could have on everything from dollar devaluation to eventually, maybe not initially, but eventually inflation. And even just the fact that with that much out there, even if you're making 7% on interest or 10% on some stocks, you're still losing ground. And so this idea that we can keep printing money and deficits don't matter is a lie being told by a lot of individuals. And you're willing to cut through that because you're committed to truth.
Well, absolutely, Kirby. I consider truth a plumb line. If you're a carpenter, you take that brass fob and you drop it at the end of a line, and you hold it up against the wall so you know what straight is. And we're living in a culture that doesn't have a plumb line. And the plumb line is crooked at best. It's really not truth, as you say. So without that, everything that we build is going to be incorrect. It's going to be fake. It's going to be vulnerable. And I believe the premise of your whole campaign right now is let's establish what is truth, because then you have a solid foundation to build upon. And right now, my wife and I were reading an article the other day, Kirby. I'd love to get you to comment on this in some of your upcoming programs. But there are now math theoreticians who, if that's a word, people who study math theory, who are saying that 1 + 1 actually does not equal 2. And a part of what's wrong with Western culture is that we've been teaching these objective facts, and it's alienating and offensive to some people who don't really see it that way. Now, to me, that's the end of civilization. If you can't agree that 1 and 1 is 2, it's all over. You cannot even build anything that's going to be enduring. And the same is true with God's truth. If we do not have something to build our house upon, then it's all built upon sand. And so I want to support you in what you're doing because you are getting the truth out. What you're doing every day is taking what little contribution I make, and you're creating an exponential effect around it. And you do that on so many issues. And so I'm contributing on the economic side, but Kerby, you and your team are contributing on every facet of society. And I think we're in an urgent time in history to get the truth out. And I don't know if I answered your question, but I wanted to quickly say I believe your message and your approach is more urgent than ever.
Let me just mention that since you brought it up, I did a commentary on that, and it was August 5th. Are math and grammar racist? Mm-hmm. And the math one comes from a professor of Cambridge talking about Western mathematics, the secret weapon of cultural imperialism. You got to think we're making it up. We're not. Matter of fact, the next hour when we talk with Robert Knight about how Unilever doesn't even want to use the word normal, like normal hair color or normal shampoo or normal soap and all these kinds of things. And then, of course, an English department at Rutgers talking about the fact that we shouldn't use grammar because that's racist. And it's just kind of the insanity, Brad. And if nothing else, that's why we're coming to individuals, because we're just all looking around saying, where do we find sources of truth? And we want to be your source of truth here at Point of View.
And we're becoming the source of truth in a really much bigger way than even 3 to 6 months ago. It has been breathtaking, the changes that have happened. And as Chuck was saying, it's ridiculous stuff. It's just, who's going to believe this? We're not making it up.
Well, of course, we did also one on woke mathematics the year before, so it's just getting out of hand. So, first of all, Chuck, you are supporters of Point of View, so I thought I might just come back to you because we certainly appreciate everything at Crown Financial, but why would somebody at Crown Financial want to invest in Point of View?
Well, I think about George Mueller, who was the great Bible teacher, Bible scholar from England and lived in Bristol, England, and he demonstrated God's faithfulness by trusting the Lord for his provision to raise orphans. And many people know George Mueller, and I've studied his life. I've read his autobiography, all of his diaries. But what I didn't know about him is that he was a supporter of Hudson Taylor's ministry to China.
Wow.
And while he was trusting the Lord to provide for orphans, he also saw an opportunity to support other ministers who he believed were getting the job done in areas where he was not working. And Ann and I both believe that it's our privilege to serve at Crown and to teach people God's principles of stewardship, and that's the lane that we're swimming in. But when I look at God's work all over the world, there are other people swimming in other lanes that we think we want to partner with that are doing a great job. And Point of View is certainly one of those, Kerby, not just because you and I are friends and we have a respect for each other's calling, but I sincerely believe what you're doing urgently needs to be supported. So we take the funds that God provides for us, and we want to be good stewards of multiplying his kingdom with it. And you're on our list every year to be a part of the support team, a part of the truth team, because we think you're doing it better than we could do it, and we want others to join in. And so I am happy not only to personally give, but to encourage others to join us and to make an investment in God's kingdom at the very core of where we need help, and that is getting the truth of God's word known in our culture today.
Well, we're going to take a break, and this would be a great time for you to visit the website, pointofview.net, and make your gift, or even to give us a call, 800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151, and we'll be back right after this.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Continue our conversation here with Chuck Bentley. And again, it is Truth Team Week, and we are committed to truth, and we hope that you are committed to truth and committed to us as well. And I might just mention, as we talk about his book, 7 Gray Swans, which we're getting into, one of the things that I was saying, even to my own Sunday school class as we were talking through this, is if you think about this in 1 Chronicles 12:32, it said, the sons of Issachar are men who understood the times with knowledge of what Israel was to do. We need to understand our times with knowledge of what we should do. And wouldn't it be a great testimony to the world, as maybe some people are wondering if the society's kind of falling apart and there are all sorts of economic questions, if Christians using biblical principles about their finances and living a biblical life would stand out so much more in our society. And so in some respects, as I know there's a lot of uncertainty about the future under this administration and printing so much money, there is still opportunity for you to have a sound financial foundation, and we hope that, if nothing else, you listen to Point of View so you can hear some of that. But, Brad, one of the chapters here, and I want to get some conversation with Chuck Bentley, is about socialism. You know, we wrote this little booklet on capitalism and socialism to try to understand why so many young people were buying into this. And I did a section there on answers to some of the criticism of capitalism. But we came back and wrote another one on socialism, because this one just looks at all the justification, all the arguments for socialism, and gives some of the answers to it. And did you ever think that you were going to have a president who was actually going to try to implement socialist policies?
I really didn't. And I remember my wife and I had several conversations about what the country is looking like in the future post-election. And I am just awestruck by the changes and by the rapidity of what's going on. It's kind of like this steamroller coming. However, I say that in a very negative way, in a positive way. What an opportunity we have to be committed to truth and to communicate that to the world around us. Our world has never needed Jesus.
That's for sure. Well, Chuck, let me come to you, because I think the longest chapter in your book, 7 Gray Swans, which, by the way, I have a link there so people can get it in Kindle if they'd like, is on American democratic socialism. And that has still appealed to this younger generation, and I know that's why you put it in the book.
Well, I think they confuse it with an empathetic response to the income inequality that they see in the world. They care. They care for other people. They see this disparity happening. It's disgusting to them, and they want to do something about it. And I think the closest philosophy they reach for is, socialism must solve that problem. The reality is that it doesn't solve that problem. There are still rich and poor under socialistic philosophy. The only difference is between capitalism and socialism is that in socialism, the government chooses who is rich and who is poor. Capitalism is based on merit. And obviously, you and I and Brad understand that there are challenges with capitalism. But I believe that God's Word provides the solution, that His principles, His economy is better. It is superior to how man implements anything. And so when we have the truth of God's economy, then we know how to manage and navigate through these challenges. But I do see this gray swan as being very much a present danger, because it's being adopted even by well-meaning Christians who try to argue that Jesus himself was a socialist. And my view is that you cannot support that in Scripture. In fact, Scripture would point you the other direction, that it's the Lord who believes in private property. It's the Lord who set up the system for private ownership. He told us not to covet what our neighbors have. He told us that if we don't work, we should not eat. And so I believe we have to defend capitalism as moderated through a transformed heart by God.
And so, again, one of the things I do in both these booklets, which, again, we make available to people that donate to this ministry, is have a section on, does the Bible teach socialism? And I take them through Acts 4 and even say, really, the answer to Acts 4 is in Acts 5, because it did not actually, was it not remaining in your own? And after you sold it, was it not in your control? And those kinds of things. But that's the kind of teaching. And even here you quote a book that is called Jesus Was a Socialist. So there's a lot of teaching, Chuck Bentley, that we have to do, first of all, within the church. But second of all, I think people listening to you and me say, why are you so optimistic? There are all sorts of really danger signs on the horizon. Yes, because if we understand what we can do by getting out of debt, by making sure that we have investments that have value, that aren't going to be tied to fiat currency and those kinds of things, actually, I think that would be beneficial for many of our listeners, don't you think?
Well, I think so, Kerby, and I'm optimistic, and I should mention up front that I think that the policies being implemented today are going to have some very negative consequences, and that pain, in my opinion, will help bring us to our senses. You know, pain can be a wonderful teacher, and I think we're going to see more economic pain. I think we're going to see policies that are not good for our country, and hopefully there'll be a backlash to that when people feel that pain. It sounds good to print money. It sounds good to do these so-called fiscal stimulus plans, but it's really like putting sugar in your body. It's a very short burst of energy, but long-term it leads to an unhealthy body. And so that's going to happen. And I believe that those of us who are believers, who will stand up for the truth, we will see a day when there will be an opportunity to replace bad policy with good policy. I was reading in 2 Thessalonians, Paul called Satan the lawless one, the one who rejects the law. And essentially, that means he rejects the truth. And he says because people refuse to believe the truth, that the Lord sends this powerful delusion. And as I listen to you and Brad, I think we're living in that delusion right now. It's as if the world is turned upside down. And out of that delusion, people experience the pain of their rejection of truth. And that's what leads them to salvation. Oftentimes it's in our pain and distress and the recognition that we don't have it all figured out, we can't live apart from God, we need His truth, that we come back to the truth. And that's why I'm remaining hopeful.
Well, if nothing else, one of the things you talk about in the book is this idea of universal basic income. And I was talking to someone else off the air, and they were kind of like, yeah, well, that was Andrew Yang. That's not happening. And then you remind us, didn't you get a stimulus check last year? Didn't you get a debit card? Aren't you getting another one in the mail or into your... and so you can see in some respects we're already being set up for that. Or here, my booklet that deals with privacy and surveillance. In the 7 Gray Swans, you talk about issues that are really of concern to us, which we can do something about right now in terms of social scoring and biometric ID and all sorts of other things. So in some respects, it's not like everything's lost. If anything, in many cases, we're trying to give some of our listeners marching orders on what they can do to make sure that we don't head down to a world that looks a little bit like communist China.
Well, the very best outcome is for people other than you and I to be equipped with the truth. And that's the thing that's so important about Point of View, is you're equipping the edge of the movement. You're empowering those who are in places where you and I may never reach, where the radio program may never reach. You're pouring into the next generation of future leaders, the millennials who are passionate about these issues as well. That's the multiplication factor that is so important. You are not simply going on the air and broadcasting information. You're equipping others with that information. So they're taking it into their churches. They're taking it into their spheres of influence. And so there's a giant ripple effect out of Point of View. And I just want to say again, Ann and I are careful about who we choose to support. We take that stewardship responsibility very, very seriously. And we are personally supporting Point of View, not just by coming on the program or appreciating one another, but we make financial contributions every year to your ministry because we want you to have a bigger ripple effect. You know, if you throw a large stone into the pond, the ripples will go all the way across the pond. And so those of us who can, if we will just throw those stones into the pond, we'll create more and more ripples of truth.
Chuck, we always appreciate your enthusiasm, and thank you for the fact that you've been a supporter for these many years. And again, thank you for writing 7 Gray Swans. We have information about that in Crown Financial on our website. So thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you, Kerby, and thank you, Brad, and I'm praying for you. This is the time to stand for truth. It's the most important thing we can do is to leave a legacy that we supported the truth and wanted to advocate for it. We want to stand against the lawless one and be those who knew the truth and spread the truth. So thank you for the privilege, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Chuck.
We're going to take a break, and let me just mention, we are committed to truth, and we want you to be committed to this ministry. So again, you can give us a call, 800-347-5151. Looking for maybe 10 of you to call during the break. This would be just a great time to hear from you. You've heard why Chuck and his wife actually support this ministry, and so we encourage you to do the same. You can also go to the website, pointofview.net. When we come back, we'll talk about some of the gifts that we like to put in your hands if you would like to receive them. But let's just encourage your phone calls, 800-347-5151. Or, of course, you can go to the website, pointofview.net.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
Point of View is one of, in my opinion, 2 or 3 places where you can really get this kind of information, and it is sorely lacking in our culture. And so if we don't support them, I'm not convinced those messages will get out.
I always wanted to give because I thought that Point of View really brings a lot of things in out here in the open that you don't hear anywhere else. And I knew when I was hearing them there, well, I could count on it being something that you could check into it, and the proof would be there. I didn't have to wonder, well, where did they make that stuff up from? I just know that it's going to be facts. That's what I call true journalism and putting the stuff out. I really think that's great.
Committed to truth, and that is the theme this week at our Truth Team Week. And we have Brad Fisk with us still. And next hour, we're going to be talking with Robert Knight. And it's kind of interesting because one of the things Chuck was talking about is equipping other people in their sphere of influence. And of course, we've seen that pro-life doctors speaking on the issue of medical ethics. And we've seen educators deciding to start a Christian school. And we've seen pro-life people starting pregnancy resource centers. But one of the things we're going to be talking about with Robert Knight is media bias, which is one of our booklets.
That's a biggie.
But we also talked about this whole idea of privacy and surveillance.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm starting to run into a number of young people with degrees that they're getting in engineering or in computers. And that's important too, Brad, because we're recognizing that there's kind of a media blackout. People are being thrown off of social media.
Right.
And so we need to even provide our own channels for that and to really encourage people there. So a lot of people say, well, what am I doing when I'm supporting Point of View? Well, you're supporting the radio program. You're supporting all the resources that we put in your hands. But also, you're maybe even equipping the next generation to make a very significant difference for the Lord.
And here's something else you're doing. If you give, we're going to match your dollars.
Oh, very good.
Dollar for dollar match challenge up to $1,000. We would love to get that cleared up by the top of the hour. And it just takes a few of you going to the phone, 4 of you joining the Truth Team combined, we'll get that $1,000. What that means, the next $1,000 given is going to be doubled thanks to some friends of the ministry. 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. Or you can give at pointofview.net. pointofview.net.
Robert Knight will be with us next hour, and we'll be talking about some issues in the news. And one of those, of course, is he used to work with the Los Angeles Times and has worked with One News Now and Town Hall. And, of course, he writes for the Washington Times. So he's been on both sides of this, Media Research Center and the rest. But if nothing else, he also has reminded us how crazy it's become. And we'll talk about one of the columns I've posted. The word normal now cannot be used. I'm not even making this up.
Yeah.
This is just, and of course, my commentary today is about the cancel culture. Individual being canceled simply because he said he read a book. I mean, what? I mean, this is just
it's happening
getting
all over the place. It's just an amazing thing.
So again, people say, well, what happens if I don't support you? Well, again, maybe you can find information somewhere else. I'm not sure where some of this is being covered anywhere else. Certainly not in the mainstream media, maybe some places in Christian radio, but certainly we try to cover all these different kinds of issues and produce these booklets that help equip you to make a difference so that you can read it. You can even find some of the further information and the additional resources. So if you want to dig into it a little bit more, you can pass these on to your friends, your neighbors, your coworkers. You can use this to influence your legislature. We've got a lot to do, and a lot of people are saying, well, I'm a little concerned about where the nation is going, where this country is going, where our society is going. Well, that's why it's time to roll up our sleeves and get involved, and we're helping you do that.
That's right. The next people that give up to $1,000, it will be matched. 800-347-5151, 800-347-5151, or pointofview.net.
Point of View Truth Team.
Thank you for your program. I am a team member, and you have opened my eyes to the truth.
You have a wonderful program. I just want to thank you for being there. It's great.
I just wanted to call in and express my gratitude for the awesome work that you guys have done. I've been listening for about 6 months now, and it's just been something I can hardly miss. Thank you for giving me my daily dose of truth with a biblical worldview. I'd just like to encourage anyone listening that's inspired by Point of View to give what they can. I'm a California millennial and Christian, and I now can say I support Point of View.
Thank you. First of all, let me say I listen to y'all's show every day as much as I'm able, and I really appreciate the topics and conversation that y'all bring to the fore.
I listen to y'all's show a great deal, and I really appreciate what you guys do.
Point of View Truth Team.
Back once again, we have, what, $1,000 match on the table? Is
We
that
do
correct?
indeed,
Yes.
at 800-347-5151. We have other gifts as well.
I thought I might just mention that if you are watching online, I will hold up one of these, and this is just a very beautiful woman's bag, and it has point of view on it. I had somebody in the studio here said, it looks like Michael Kors. I don't know whether it does or not, but she said, matter of fact, we had to make sure that she didn't walk out with it because it's in such a nice shape. We have one that's a canvas bag as well, and that's what we are making available to those of you that give, for example, $50 a month. And that would include, of course, Outlook magazine, the booklets we've talked about, but also either the canvas messenger bag, which is for the men, and I'll hold that up in just a few minutes, and then this leather laptop bag. And, of course, if you want to give it a higher level, $100 a month, well, then we add all sorts of other things. We fill the bag up with books and booklets and a tumbler and a variety of other things.
If you go to the website, all of this is described there, and that's pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. You know, Kerby, I was thinking one of the distinctives that we have, which is really we don't talk about enough, and that is we bring people like the Chuck Bentleys of the world to the microphones. And we are very, you might say, guest heavy, but I think we do that on purpose. That's been one of the intents. You don't even pretend to know it all, and I know you don't, neither do I. So we bring in the experts. We bring in the specialists who know more about that topic. And I think that's an incredible service that we offer to you. And we're asking you to please serve us, help us financially, won't you? 800-347-5151. That's a toll-free number, 800-347-5151. There's never been a more strategic time to give than right now as we face truth being blatantly redefined from biblical truth. You can also give online at pointofview.net.
And again, I'm just thinking some of the guests, Robert Knight, of course, will be with us this next hour. You probably don't say, I only really hear him on Point of View. And I've even joked with him. I said, I'm sure you're getting all sorts of calls from MSNBC and CNN and ABC and and of course, I have seen him there occasionally, but not much. Even tomorrow, we got Colonel Alan West. Well, you know, the more that people started saying, well, he's just kind of a Republican, we're going to just ignore him, although you still see him on Fox or Gary Bauer or these kinds of people that we'll have on tomorrow. Those are the individuals. But then you also are going to have a chance to hear from individuals that started a Christian school, people that have started a pregnancy resource center. We had somebody the other day, just a private citizen, said, I'm going to really try to deal with the issue of prison ministry. Right. And so we try to give you an opportunity to see
what of the faith.
And encourage you to do that for your community as well. We're coming to a break, though. I think we still have that $1,000 match on the table.
There's room for you at 800-347-5151. It's $1,000 dollar-for-dollar match. Every dollar you give, up to $1,000 matched. Go to pointofview.net, pointofview.net, or call us at 800-347-5151.
When we come back, we're going to get into media bias. We're going to get into social media. We're going to get into the issue of privacy and surveillance. And we've also posted this article, No more normal skincare. No more normal shampoo. Oh, you've got to be kidding. Nope, we're not. 1-800-347-5151, 1-800-347-5151, or pointofview.net. We'll be right back.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
I just want to thank you so much for all the wonderful programming you have. You're just absolutely fantastic.
I recently started listening to Point of View, and I really found it interesting because of the different subjects you cover. Thank you for that.
I really appreciate everything that you do in keeping us informed.
Thank you, Kerby, for everything that you have been doing. I appreciate all the work that you're doing, advocating for the Word of God. Thank you so much.
Point of view, I think, is absolutely necessary because it's a Christian perspective, a biblical worldview perspective, and receive very current, up-to-date information about what is really going on, week to week in our culture, which is changing so rapidly, and yet it's morally sliding backwards.
Yeah, I'm just, first of all, I thank you guys. Y'all's program is wonderful, and enjoy it every day. I learn so much every time I listen to it.
Point of View Radio Talk Show.
Hi, this is Kerby Anderson. Each day we take on the tough issues and provide a biblical perspective to them. The topics we cover are wide-ranging. Apologetics, theology, prophecy, creation and evolution, intelligent design, marriage, family, child-rearing, the millennial generation, trends in society, politics, economics, business, religious liberty, the Constitution, public policy, foreign policy, military policy, tensions in the Middle East, abortion, homosexuality, pornography, sexual ethics, media, technology, history, and America's godly heritage. We talk about anything that affects your faith, your family, or your freedom. So don't go anywhere, because Point of View continues right now.
Across America, live. This is Point of View. And now, Kerby Anderson.
Thank you for joining us. We're going to be talking in just a few minutes with a good friend, Robert Knight. Matter of fact, a couple of articles we've posted: media blackout on the border and false media report on the Georgia spokesman. And I'll talk about some of those when he's on, including also his one on just, again, a radical version of normal. But another article we've posted is education's a big issue for us. And I thought it was interesting that there are a number of columns that have come out. One the other day I was reading that was saying we need a Department of Education, but not this one. And this one instead is one called Bureaucracy Has Conquered Schools, Joe Biden Won't Fix It. And it's bureaucracy in the decline of public schools, in which it says, you go back a half a century, Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, all the way up to, of course, Barack Obama's race to the top, or you could even between there talk about George W. Bush, No Child Left Behind, and now the Biden attempt to actually, within the COVID stimulus bill. Did you know that there's an education bill inside the COVID stimulus bill? That $1.9 trillion. Well, that's true. And what they then go on to say is we have seen so many of these efforts fail, in part because of the bureaucracy and a number of other things. The schools have not changed. And one of the things that we are making available, of course, to the people that donate to this ministry are some booklets. And one of those is the one that's just now coming out to those of you that have supported us in the past, A Biblical View on Crisis in Education. And that first couple of pages just goes into the crisis we have because of virtual learning and trying to get a 6-year-old to pay attention to a computer, which doesn't make any sense. All the schools that have been closed down. But then I go on from there to talk about just the educational failure that existed before, the issue of education and illiteracy, educational indoctrination, and finally, what a biblical view of education is. And so these are some topics that we have posted on the website for you to read, but also are part of some of them writing that we're doing right now in the field of education. But we also are talking this week about being committed to truth as part of our Truth Team Week, and I have Brad Fisk in studio with us.
Hey, it's good to be with you, Kerby. It's called Committed to Truth. That's what this week is about, and we're asking you to please consider donating to the ministry during this week. We call Truth Week Committed to Truth. Pointofview.net is one place to go to give, pointofview.net, or 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
Point of View is a part of my daily life, and I know of no other radio program that helps its listeners to develop, articulate, and then defend a biblical worldview as successfully as yours does. For those reasons, I consider it an honor to be able to support Point of View financially, and I would encourage all of your listeners, both young and old, to prayerfully consider doing the same.
I just turned your program on, and I want to just let you know I was working in an abortion clinic when abortion first became legal, and I thought I was helping women. And the Lord showed me in a very powerful way, as He removed the veil from me, what exactly I'd been involved in. And I am proof of forgiveness. And I want to just let you know how much I appreciate just getting the truth out.
I really appreciate your program. I don't get to listen to it every day because I have to work, but it's a really a blessing to me and to all of us.
You know, my husband and I take so many extra precautions to guard our children, and it is a huge effort on the part of Christian parents to do that. I wanted to thank y'all for everything you do each day to inform Christian families and our community about the things we can do, and just the way you're so informative. I listen to you daily and love you guys and appreciate you so much.
I just appreciate all you guys do. I mean, I learned so much, and it's amazing what you teach that I say to other people, and they look at me like, where did you hear that? So I appreciate you guys. So thank you for all you do.
Point of View Truth Team.
Committed to truth, and this is part of our Truth Team Week. And in just a minute, we're going to be talking with Robert Knight. But, Brad, I think we still have a match on the table, don't we?
We got something special to announce to you. We have a $1,000 match challenge, and some friends of the ministry put that money up, and they're simply saying the $1,000 does not go into the total. It's not allowed to until it is matched. Dollar for dollar with gifts from you and you and you and you. And the way to get in touch with us to give is calling us at 800-347-5151. That's 800-347-5151. You can also give online, pointofview.net, pointofview.net.
You know, if you go to the website, pointofview.net, and click on the banner, even before you give, you might want to read some of the material we've posted, because we're talking about the kinds of topics we address here on Point of View, various stories and facts that are simply ignored. One of our articles is about the fact we have what some people call a 5-alarm crisis on the border, and Team Biden has imposed a media blackout. So we want to talk about that with Robert Knight in just a minute. Other topics which are considered taboo that are just simply not covered or canceled, which relates very much to my commentary, or in some cases where people have deliberately and deceptively cut some things out. And our Georgia listeners will be aware of this, but we want to talk about this for everybody in just a few minutes. You have that sheriff captain who was talking about that terrible killing of 8 people in the Atlanta area, the massage parlors, but he actually told what the individual, the shooter, said, and somebody clipped it so it made it sound like the police officer said that. And it is one of the more deceptive examples of media bias that we'll be talking about with Robert Knight. And that's in some respects why we do Point of View. You know that Marlon Maddox started it almost 50 years ago because he wanted to provide an alternative to the media, because a lot of stories weren't getting covered. And then over time, as we had more and more of the internet, a lot of people said, well, there's not a lack of information, there's sort of too much information, and I have to wonder what's true and where do I find truth, which has become kind of the new responsibility we have here. There's still a lot of media bias by not covering stories, but there's also a lot of confusion, and we're trying to be your source of truth and want to be your source of truth. So we're going to be talking about that with Robert Knight. And people say, well, then why should I support Point of View? Well, because we are providing that kind of news, information, commentary, and guests that we provide every single day here on Point of View.
You know, I don't know about you, but we look at the news and the everyday goings on in our country, and things have changed dramatically just in the past 2 or 3 months. There's been incredible shifts away from biblical truth, away from being committed to truth and growing in God's word. And that's very alarming. But we're not being negative. We're actually being positive, because Point of View provides that information. We screen. We watch your back. That's kind of like the way we like to say it. We watch your back, and we're asking you, if you're committed to truth, please help us financially. Won't you? 800-347-5151. We are a listener-supported ministry. Listener-supported. We don't have commercials. Please help us. 800-347-5151, or you can give at pointofview.net, pointofview.net.
Let me get you ready for Robert Knight's going to be with us, a former Los Angeles Times news editor. We're going to get into the issue of media bias, but especially as he begins to talk about those issues, that is certainly an important topic that we will address in just a minute. You don't want to miss that, so that's why I would encourage you to either go to the website right now, pointofview.net, or give us a call. We'll take care of it before he gets back on. 800-347-5151. We have a match of $1,000. That means your gift of $100 becomes $200. A gift of $360 becomes what? $720. Yeah, there we go.
This is Viewpoints with Kerby Anderson.
Cancel culture has been around for some time, and most of us have a few examples of the crazy reactions from the woke mob. But the worst may have taken place earlier this month when a musician was canceled for mentioning a book he read. Matt Walsh observes that just when you think we have made it to the farthest reaches of cultural lunacy and of the cowardice that enables that lunacy, we find still deeper depths to plunge. Winston Marshall is the banjo and lead guitar for the group Mumford & Sons, and merely posted this tweet mentioning the Antifa expose by Andy Ngo. He said, "Finally had the time to read your important book. You're a brave man." That's all he said, but that was enough for the cancel mob to come down on his head. Now, you might wonder if there was something else in his past. Well, 3 years ago, the group invited Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson to visit their London studios. He had his picture with Dr. Peterson, and that drew controversy. People were calling for Marshall to be fired. People were calling him all sorts of names and made unfair accusations. He might have posted a response reminding critics that all he said was that he'd read the book. He could have even argued that you can't criticize him for reading a book that you probably haven't even read. But that's not what Marshall said. He deleted the tweet, and apparently many others, and wrote the usual groveling apology about coming to better understand the pain caused by the book I endorsed. Then he went on to say that he'd be taking time away from the band to examine my blind spots. The apology, of course, did nothing to help his situation, but unfortunately did everything to embolden the woke mob to go after another celebrity that strays from leftist ideology. I'm Kerby Anderson, and that's my point of view.
Go deeper on topics like you hear on Viewpoints by visiting pointofview.net. Pointofview.net. How can we stay committed to truth if we don't even know what the truth is? You are listening to Point of View, where we help you discern truth and live it out.
Hi, everybody. Max Lucado here. I want to join the loud chorus of applause and appreciation for Point of View, as well as Christian Radio. The unique voice of this powerful ministry over the airwaves is absolutely essential in this day and age. And so I stand with those of you who support and encourage this powerful ministry. I thank Kerby and for the faithful friend that he's been to me all these many years. May God bless this ministry. Let's stay behind it.
We encourage you to get behind this ministry, and we are committed to truth, and that is kind of the theme this week during Truth Team. Brad Fisk with us, but we're also going to spend some time now talking with our good friend Robert Knight. We've posted a column that appeared in the Washington Times, and I've mentioned it, and every time I do, people say, "You have got to be kidding me," but it's called The War on Normal and Why It Matters. And then I've posted some other particular pieces I want to get his comments about. As an individual, a former Los Angeles Times news editor, a media fellow with Hoover Institution, as an individual that, of course, has been with Media Matter groups, like Media Research and those, but not Media Matters. I don't want to confuse everybody with that. And all sorts of other things that he's looked at in terms of the media. And it relates very much to the booklet we put out a while back called Media Bias. So, Robert Knight, it is great to have you on the program, and I want to talk about whether we can use the word normal anymore.
Well, not according to Unilever, the huge multinational corporation that makes so many products. I mean, they have Dove, Lifebuoy, Hellmann's mayonnaise, Breyer's ice cream. I mean, this is a huge company, and they just announced they're going to get rid of the word normal because they did a survey and they said, well, people found it offensive. So it has to go.
It's just, I have told people this, and your piece has come out for about a week, and yet even before this, I was talking to somebody off air who is really a very alert woman, and she said, I know you're kidding me now. This has to be Babylon Bee. This has to be The Onion. There is no way. How am I going to purchase shampoo if I don't know if it's for dry hair, oily hair, or normal hair? You can't use the word normal anymore. This is what, 400 brands in 190 countries or something like that?
Yeah, and 2.5 billion customers, they claim, which is probably not an exaggeration. They're all over the place. But this shows how the culture is shaping the marketplace and forcing it to this kind of extreme form of leveling, where there can't be anything normal. There can't be true diversity. You have to do whatever the left tells you. And the big companies are part of the problem. They cave immediately, and in some instances, they even are leading the charge in trying to spread the idea of multiculturalism, for instance, as opposed to, American exceptionalism. And you see it everywhere. I seized on Unilever's dispatching of normal because I thought it's just emblematic of what we're facing across the board.
Well, and again, I'm holding up our booklet here on immigration. Let's talk about that for just a minute, because you have also been a student of numbers and words and phrases and all sorts of things. A border challenge, not a border crisis, for example, which we'll get to in just a minute. These are called irregular crossings. And this, after a while, you just say the whole language has been debased. You're a journalist. You're an individual that certainly understands how to write carefully, having done that not only in the secular media, but also in Christian media. But when we just change the definition of every word, after a while, we don't even know what we're talking about, do we?
Well, no, and that's part of the strategy of the left. That Satan, and I'll just say it outright, it's Satan's agenda that is to confuse everyone to where evil can come across as good, light can come across as, or darkness can come across as light. Here, let me give you a current example of how they mess with language, and this is in the Washington Post, and it was yesterday, an editorial called Leveling the Playing Field, and it was about these terrible attacks on transgender girls in sports, meaning they said, no, it's okay for guys to compete in women's sports, and anyone who says otherwise is a hateful bigot. But this is the part that struck me. They came out for... says these same people at the same time oppose the, quote, the medical treatments transgender youth receive to align their bodies with their gender identities and mitigate any physical disparities. Should I translate that for the audience, Kerby? It means doing radical surgery of one's sexual parts, even if they're healthy. And then, this is classic euphemisms that mask what's really going on, which is a form of sickness.
Let me take one or two others that I'd love to get your thoughts of. One of the ones I've posted here by Joe Concha. There's a 5-alarm crisis on the border, and Team Biden imposed a media blackout. Now, first of all, they can't call it a crisis. Now, the Secretary of Homeland Security, certainly when he was the Deputy Secretary of Homeland Security a number of years ago, and when the current president back then was Vice President, when we had 1,000 people cross the border, that was considered a crisis. The other day here in Texas, where we're broadcasting from, had 6,000 people cross the border, and they're still telling us it's a challenge, not a crisis. But here's the other part. Even some of our friends in the liberal media are saying, now what's going on? You can't even let us take a picture of what's going on in those facilities. There's a level of media blackout that you're used to seeing maybe in a totalitarian country, but certainly not in the United States. And you've been in the media. What about that?
Well, yeah, it is a media blackout, and we can't get to the bottom of it at the highest levels because the Biden White House won't take questions. You know, he hasn't had a normal press conference since he got elected president, and the one time he finished a statement and was about to answer questions, the White House feed was cut. You know, this is right out of Dr. Strangelove or something. I mean, this is who's running the government. And a lot of people suspect that it really isn't Joe Biden, that it's a group of hardcore leftists who are having him sign executive orders like giving out gumdrops and doing very dangerous things to our country. And the press isn't the least bit curious about all this. And I noticed, we can maybe talk about this in another segment, but recently a federal judge announced that he felt that the Supreme Court decision that established the high bar for proving libel
Yes, I saw that. Yeah.
case has to be reexamined because the media is no longer functioning like a media. He said it's all in lockstep with one party, that is the Democrats. It doesn't allow any dissension, and therefore it shouldn't have the protections that a free press should have. Of course, we've heard the same thing about social media. Facebook, Google, they're all censoring conservative content, which is, by the way, why it's so important to have shows like yours, Kerby, that get the truth out by other means. Never has Christian talk radio and alternative media been so important.
Well, and again, I think, as you were going to point out, the difference in the media, you have told us before, and you worked for the Los Angeles Times, that, you know, there wasn't a sense in which everybody was agreeing with you, just the opposite. But at least there was a sense of, well, we need to be fair. We ought to at least give the other side a chance to express their opinion, because, after all, sometimes truth is found by the war of ideas. Now, there are so many topics that are simply never given an alternative viewpoint, and that has changed dramatically even since you've actually worked as a reporter there and a news editor for the Los Angeles Times?
It's night and day. And that was back when it was very liberal. But now the main media, and I would say at the top are the New York Times and the Washington Post and the networks, are hardcore left. To say the least. And, you know, every day I have to read the Washington Post because I live in the Washington area. It's what I do. I'm a columnist, so I have to keep up with all the press. And every day there are at least 10 articles designed specifically to rub salt in the nation's racial wounds. They're all about racial resentment. If there isn't an ongoing crisis, they dig one up from years ago and put it out there as if it's a current problem. Right now, they're declaring that America is at war with its Asian population, all because of this mass shooting in Georgia, where the guy shot up massage parlors. And he told police it's because he was a sex addict, and he got all upset, and he didn't like to be tempted, and had nothing to do with race. But now we have people marching in the streets. We have the media running massive stories on how America treats its Asian minorities. And this is all part of the left's divide and conquer strategy. We're all being divided into identity groups, pitted at each other, and they hope by this they can grow the government to solve all the problems and turn us into a socialist country.
Well, we're going to take a break, and this is a great opportunity for you to join with us. We have a match on the table, $1,000 match, so we need to hear from you. 800-347-5151. That's 1-800-347-5151, pointofview.net. We'll talk about that Atlanta shooting because there's another example of media bias. We'll talk about that right after this.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View will continue after this.
You are listening to Point of View. The opinions expressed on Point of View do not necessarily reflect the views of the management or staff of this station. And now, here again is Kerby Anderson.
Back once again, if you would like to join with us, of course, that number is 800-347-5151 for your pledge, or, of course, pointofview.net. We have a match on the table.
We do.
And that's a $1,000 match. We'd like to meet that very quickly, so please take the time. Even as you're listening, you can just go to the website, pointofview.net, and make your gift, and it's just a great opportunity for you to do so. And it only takes a few minutes. I did mine earlier today. It's only I don't think it took 2 minutes. lots more, and so very good. And so, again, I would hope that you would join with us because, as we've said, the theme this week, Committed to Truth, we know that you are as well. Robert Knight with us. And, Robert, one of the articles I've posted, it's something that maybe our Georgia listeners know, but we broadcast all over the country, and I'm sure there's some in Georgia that don't know the story. And you mentioned just a minute ago about the shooting, which is horrible, this Atlanta shooting. This 21-year-old suspect goes in, shoots, and kills 8 people in the Atlanta-era massage parlors. But the piece I've posted, I have entitled False Media Report of Georgia Spokesman. It turns out that the officer has been relieved as a spokesperson because the media, I know this will surprise you, lied. This individual is Sheriff Captain Jay Baker, and he actually was accused of saying that the shooter killed people because he was having a really bad day. Now, that came from a Vox journalist, I'll put journalism in sky quotes here, who actually set out a truncated video and said yesterday was a really bad day for him. This is what he did. And so now you have ABC News, Georgia Sheriff's Department under fire after official says spa shooting suspect had a really bad day. Washington Post, not to miss out here, editorial board, the headline, the Atlanta shootings cannot be dismissed as someone having a bad day. And of course, Twitter blew up. Well, we give you the 3-page piece in which there was a reporter asking, first of all, they were asking, was this racially motivated? He said, no, it really was not. But they were saying, can you understand, did he understand the gravity of what he did? And Baker said, well, when I spoke with the investigators, they interviewed him this morning, and they got the impression that he understood the gravity of it. And there, he said, and he was pretty much fed up and had been on the end of his rope, and yesterday was a really bad day for him, and this is what he did. Now, the phrase was a really bad day is a quote of the shooter, the 21-year-old shooter. But you have the Huffington Post, a sheriff's captain saying the spa suspect was having a really bad day. You have, of course, Washington Post saying the shootings cannot be dismissed as someone having a bad day. And so they relieved him. And Robert Knight is probably the best example of media malpractice where this individual deliberately took out the words before and after and made it look like the sheriff was saying that, and he was simply answering a question in the press conference of what the suspect said. And this is kind of the worst example of media bias I've seen at least in the last couple of days. What about you?
Well, that's right up there. And of course they did it because it advances their narrative that the cops are all racist, they're of no use, and we need to get rid of them too, and they're part of racist white supremacist America. But another egregious example was how the Washington Post took that phone call that President Trump made in December to the election investigator in Georgia and asked her to look into Fulton County in particular, where he said, I think there was a lot of vote fraud going on there. And if you really need to look into that. And so the Washington Post ran a piece with false quotes from President Trump, things he never said, like you'll be a national hero. And, it implied that he wanted them to falsify things and dig stuff up that wasn't there. And it wasn't the case at all. And yet, well, it worked, didn't it? I mean, that triggered calls for his second impeachment. All these Democrats went to the floor and railed against him and said, look, undermining democracy, the president's out of control. And, they blew it up and just hammered it. And right on through the impeachment process, it turns out it was all a lie. And so the Washington Post later says, oops, after getting caught by the Wall Street Journal, which actually reported on the disparity, they ran a correction and buried that. Because after all, they can't be wrong, can they? They're the Washington Post.
Well, and again, there is something I want to pass on to our listeners, Robert, because we've been talking about the need for us to have discernment, biblical discernment. And one of the tricks is to recognize that if you hear the press cite an anonymous source, In almost every case, especially with Donald Trump's example, the anonymous source was wrong. Whether it was the dirty dossier and all the statements about Russia collusion, whether it was the phone call to Ukraine, and finally he decided, okay, I'm going to release the transcripts of that, whether it was the phone call to the Georgian election officials or a number of others. So when there is an anonymous source, 9 times out of 10, maybe even 10 times out of 10, it turns out to be erroneous. And so I think what we're wanting to do is pass on to our listeners the need for you to have discernment if indeed you even pay attention to some of these media sources.
Yeah, definitely. Especially with social media, instantly conveying stuff that sounds shocking, and people weighing right in, saying, yes, even I agree with this one. And then you go look it up and you find out, nope, it's just more media bias. They framed it in a way that's not true. Don't be so quick to jump on somebody when the media steer you in that direction, because half the time they're lying. Maybe more than half.
Well, what about this? Where do people go for truth? We were talking about this week that we're committed to truth. And, people are saying, okay, what are my trusted sources? And there are days, I'll admit, that sometimes we don't even know what to believe. But we encourage people to listen to Point of View, and we encourage people to support Point of View. What would you say?
Oh, I would say definitely Point of View, because you guys do your homework and you have guests other than me who are very knowledgeable and convey lots of solid information. But I go to AmericanThinker.com. There's some very original reporting there.
Very true.
And Town Hall, of course, has lots of columnists. Wall Street Journal editorial pages are still excellent, even though I don't agree with everything on them. The news pages are kind of liberal, but they're not as bad as the Post or the New York Times. New York Post, Washington Times does some terrific reporting, and I got to speak out for the commentary section, of which I'm a part. I get to write once a week for them. But they have other columnists like Everett Piper.
Yes.
I'm sure you must have had Dr. Piper on this program, because he's outspoken.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he's got a heck of a piece this morning in the Washington Times. So there are sources you can seek out, and you have to. I've seen even good, strong conservative Christians repeat media lies, and they'll shoot these things to me via email or social media, and I'll say, no, just hold on, let me check this out, I'll get back to you. And 9 times out of 10, nope, it wasn't that way at all.
Yeah.
And
this is,
I mean, you just always have to check before you react. That I would caution everybody to do that.
Well, again, we encourage people to do that, and certainly want them to listen to Point of View. But just before I go, are you struck by the fact that we're starting to see a lot of people that wouldn't agree with Robert Knight, Kerby Anderson, or we're going to have Gary Bauer on tomorrow, whatever, who nevertheless are singing our song? You've got Glenn Greenwald talking about his concern about leftist bias in the media. You have Alan Dershowitz. You have Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Just the other day, we were talking about very liberal, secular feminist saying, I'm really concerned about almost the totalitarian temptation that I'm seeing in the White House. We're seeing a lot of individuals who wouldn't necessarily agree with Point of View from a social ethics point of view or from a cultural point of view, nevertheless saying the same things we've been saying.
Oh, yeah, and I mentioned earlier, Judge Lawrence Silberman said that, quote, 2 of the 3 most influential papers, the New York Times and Washington Post, are virtually Democratic Party broadsheets.
Amazing.
He said it's one-party control of the press and it poses a threat to a viable democracy. He said we really can't have a free, self-governing republic if you don't have a free press. And we don't really have one now. That's why you have to go to alternative press, like Point of View.
Well, again, I might also mention Jonathan Turley. I mean, we're going all sorts of people now that other times they're on the other side, but they're all saying the same thing we are, and that may be encouraging for the future. So, Robert Knight, of course, we've posted your piece on the War on Normal. We also have a link to your website, so if people want to find your other columns, your books, and other resources, we have made it very easy for people to find their way to robertknight.com, roberthknight.com.
Robert H. Knight.
Yeah, roberthknight.com. We have a link there in case somebody forgets the H, and they'll find it there, and they'll find the War on Normal and why it matters. So thank you for joining us today here on Point of View.
Always a pleasure. Keep up the good work, Kerby.
We need to take a break, but just before we do so, we still have that match on the table, I think.
We don't know. We're going to check during the break and see what's going on. But in the meantime, please give. We're committed to truth. Those of you who are, please call us at 800-347-5151. Be as generous as you can at 800-347-5151 or pointofview.net.
Welcome back to Point of View, where we discuss the issues you won't hear about anywhere else, because we are committed to truth, and God's truth applies to all areas of life.
My husband and I are your supporters. We just really appreciate the show and the people you bring on.
I am just so thankful for you, Kerby, and for you continuing in this ministry, and for people whom God has lifted up in these last days. I just want to thank you and just ask that God would bless you.
I appreciate Point of View. You've been great and wonderful. A lot of information, and I really appreciate all your work you do.
Back once again for just a few more minutes, and of course we have that match on the table, so I hope you'll give us a call, 800-347-5151. Only a few minutes left, so you can call even after we go off the program. I know some people don't want to miss any of the content, but of course you can also go to the website pointofview.net. As a program note, let me just mention tomorrow, Colonel Alan West with us.
Oh, boy.
And that will be important because we've been talking military. For a while there, I wondered in our intro, sometimes I talk about military policy, and I said, should we
talk about that, and all of a sudden the military is everywhere. This particular piece, maybe I'll post tomorrow, slandering the U.S. military again. Or also this one by Ian Hayworth, Biden is weak and our enemies know it, which also relates to the second hour guest, which will be Gary Bauer. Gary Bauer's piece, Eating Joe's Lunch, which is all about the Chinese officials that, first of all, came last year to Washington, D.C., sort of hat in hand over the trade deal because previous president, Donald Trump, actually was putting some pressure on them. This time we have the Chinese officials go to Alaska and meet and basically handed us our hat, is a nice way to put it. I've heard some other people saying they handed something else to us, but we'll leave it at that. And if nothing else, we're going to get into that with some detail in terms of the military. First of all, we support those of you in the military. We're not critical of the military, but sometimes you've not been well served by some of your commanders, some of the people in the Pentagon, and you can't talk about it. We can, and we will. And I'm sure Colonel Allen West will do so as well. Indeed. So we'll get into that a little bit and some of the other issues he's talking about. You know, he also wants to talk about the issue of reparations. Should we pay individuals who have some kind of lineage back to a slave and have people that have some lineage back to a slave owner pay people now? So we'll maybe get into that a little bit with him, but mostly it's going to be military and, of course, China and all sorts of other things that Gary Bauer loves to talk about. So those are some issues that we certainly have on the table. But Brad, also, we have covered quite a bit. If you find yourself saying, I'd like to know a little bit more about this idea of these gray swans, some of the financial issues that might be on the horizon, or maybe you wanted to look at some of these articles either by Robert Knight or about some of these aspects of media bias. Those are the case. And we live in a world where, again, get good information. I mean, I was looking back the other day. We were talking about Bitcoin, and I said, we talked about that 4 years ago. If you bought it back then, it was like $2,000. Now it's $60,000. I mean, so if nothing else, we're giving you information you can put together.
You know what you just did? You just explained another distinctive of the ministry of Point of View. We not only give you the facts and do the radio program every day, but then we have this website that is content loaded with background material. And I think that's a very important thing that people need to understand is you're giving them background. They can read up on it. They just click a link and go, not have to search around on the internet. So an incredible service is provided off air for our Point of View audience. 800-347-5151. It is Truth Team Week. We're looking for your help financially. 800-347-5151. You want us to continue on next week and the next month and next year? Give us a call, and please be generous when you give. Pointofview.net is a place to do that. Pointofview.net, or you can call us at 800-347-5151.
Point of View Truth Team.
To all listeners out there, I've been listening for over 2 years. I just recently became a supporter. So I am a proud supporter of Point of View, and so I would just encourage everyone who listens to this radio station and to your specific broadcast, because it has been so influential for me, and I refer people to it because you put out such great information, and it's so thought-invoking and conversation-stimulating. It's great. So thank you so much, and I'll continue to support you guys.
But I've decided I'm going to give Point of View something this year because I think financially we're doing better. Point of View is one of, in my opinion, 2 or 3 places where you can really get this kind of information, and it is sorely lacking in our culture. And so Point of View, and there's a couple other programs, if we don't support them, I'm not convinced those messages will get out.
Thank you very much, and I just love your program. It's been an inspiration to me for many years. I just want to encourage all those of you and help keep Point of View on the air. We cannot afford to allow these stations to go empty. Please support Point of View.
Point of View Truth Team.
And one of the individuals said, I'm doing a little bit better, and I recognize that after COVID and the pandemic and the lockdown, some of you may still be struggling financially, and we certainly encourage you to pray for us. And matter of fact, tell us, we'll pray for you. But I do know, Brad, that there are a number of individuals that said, I feel like we're coming back, and this looks good, and we would like to share something that God has placed in our hands. I know some people are going to be getting stimulus checks and things like that.
Right.
Let you decide, supporting your church, supporting this organization, whatever you want to do, that's up to you. But we certainly are dependent by your financial gifts, and if you can help us out, thank you so very much for doing so.
We would really appreciate that. 800-347-5151. 800-347-5151, or you can always give it on the net at pointofview.net, pointofview.net.
We'll be very honest that we're going to be facing some very significant challenges and are in this administration, in this culture. My commentary today is about the cancel culture, but again, we're giving you biblical ideas on how to respond to those. I mean, we just talked about some things that you can do financially to put your family in a better situation, and we can certainly talk about how we should respond to the cancel culture by not giving into a bully. We learned that at the schoolyard, but some people still haven't learned it here. And so there's just a lot of material that we're going to be covering. And if you want to try to make sense of what's going on in the military, what's going on in the culture, those are going to be conversations we're going to have tomorrow with some of our guests.
That's right. Our culture, Kirby, is going the wrong direction. It really is as a whole. And we need to step up and be what we've always been for how many years now?
Yeah, almost 50 years
now.
There
you go. And that's an amazing thing. The longest running talk show in history.
And again, that goes all the way back to Marlon Maddox starting that to really try to give an alternative to what was kind of almost a secular humanistic filibuster that was happening in the university. It was happening in the media. And we're still doing that because there are lots of stories we cover and lots of material we cover that isn't going to be covered anywhere else. But number two, because there is so much information, like, who do I believe? Who do we go to? What are our trusted sources? And certainly today, Robert Knight gave us a short list. I could add to that. Matter of fact, throughout the week, I'll give you some other sources that we go to.
Good.
But you can figure those out, interestingly enough, by going to our website even now, because you can see we've got some quotes from The Hill, from Washington Times, and a variety of others. And so if nothing else, just before we end today, let me encourage you to go to our website, because you'll see that at the various levels, we do provide you with some great benefits. At the $30 a month, $1 a day, $30 a month, you get, of course, the booklets and the Outlook. But again, maybe tomorrow I'll hold up our two bags, one which is a canvas bag for the men and a leather laptop bag for the women. And so those are at the $50 a month level. You can go to the website, pointofview.net, and see those. Or even as we're going off the air, you can give us a call. We'll be glad off air to explain all of the material that's available to you as a thank you gift. That number is 800-347-5151. We had a match on the table. I think we still do. And so that's, again, where your dollar will be doubled. 1-800-347-5151. Andrew and Steve, thank you for your help. Brad, thank you. We'll see you back here tomorrow on Point of View.
When pressure comes, we have a choice. We either stand firm on what we claim to believe, or we compromise and show that our supposed conviction was actually a mere convenience. When we really believe something, it determines how we react to disapproval or even outright persecution. If something is true, really true, then that truth informs and dictates how we respond. Point of View Radio is committed to truth, and we believe you are too. That's why you're here. And to have an impact today, to encourage you and others to stand, we need to work together. We believe no issue is too difficult, too sensitive, or too controversial to discuss because they're issues we're facing in the real world right now. I urge you to show your commitment to truth today by joining the Truth Team. Enable us to cut through today's lies and to stand firm. Give today at pointofview.net/team or call 1-800-347-5151. Point of View is committed to truth. Are you? Pointofview.net/team and 800-347-5151. Point of View is produced by Point of View Ministries.